What does Baldi's Basics Plus hide behind the scenes and off camera from the player? In this enhanced version of Baldi's Basics, we're going to be taking a closer look at all of its modes it has to offer, including the hide-and-seek levels, endless mode, the field trip levels, and a few challenges as well. Did you know It's a Bully can be found hiding out of bounds on the camping field trip? Or the strange secret ending hidden in the game? There's quite a bit to see in this game of pure insanity. Along this journey, we'll be breaking the game too, as we build our own classroom to test things. So I hope you enjoy this deep dive into Baldi's Basics Plus. Getting started, I went ahead and made a file to play on, while Baldi showed off his lightning speed lip syncing. How lovely. Already with just getting started, between that and his creepy paper-looking hand, I'm having a bit of anxiety with this screen alone. Joking aside, we're going to be checking out all the game modes here that are currently on screen. Going into the tutorial first, we'll see that we're in some type of elevator, which appears to be the way our character is traveling whenever we select a mode. The tutorial, however, is exactly just that, as it's highly recommended for any newcomers to this school. Overall, the player is shown how to move and navigate the game, along with little things that longtime players will be familiar with. There's a storage locker the player can use to store up to 3 items, which becomes useful in other game modes, as you'll see. Another new tool that the player can use is a map, which we'll talk more about in a little bit. But we'll find that we're able to travel through vents now, making for a crafty Among Us way to evade potential threats. We're also introduced to You Thought Points, which is in-game currency that can ultimately be used to purchase items from Johnny's shop. It's a fun little shop that comes in handy when getting further into the game. The tutorial concludes with a game of hide-and-seek that we'll have with Baldi, as we use all the knowledge we just acquired. Looking behind the scenes at the beginning of this tutorial though, we'll see that the school isn't fully loaded in, as it only appears to load in around our immediate area. During this, I noticed a dark figure in the distance, and of course, I felt inclined to investigate. It turned out to be Baldi, way out in the great beyond, but not the Baldi we end up interacting with. At least, that's what I believe. Because if we start the game, we'll actually see a ton of Baldis load in all around the map, with the one that's out here becoming transparent-ish, basically disappearing once we move the camera away from him. I did manage to find this particular Baldi in the files, allowing me to manipulate his movement, along with him pulling out that terrifying ruler. But that's about it. Like I said before though, we can see how the level will load in accordingly as we progress through the school. Using the ventilation shaft in this level, we'll be able to see what transpires when the player travels through it, as the whole area we were just in unloads, following with the ventilation shaft loading in immediately. Once we finish our trip through the vent, the area will load back in accordingly. There's not much else going on outside of normal gameplay within this tutorial though, so let's carry on. Following the tutorial, I decided to make my way into the field trips portion to see what it's all about. Starting off with camping, you'll see that we're deep in the woods with Baldi, along with 2 other clones of him. Approaching and interacting with this Baldi, we'll introduce a minigame we can play called Campfire Frenzy. We basically have to feed the fire fuel as long as we can. There's good fuel and bad fuel, which, as you can see, can make for quite the challenge as it speeds up. I think my favorite part about this, though, is the reaction he has when we miss. Glorious! But if we come over here, we'll have another minigame to try out, being Pick Quick Nick. Pretty much with this, once the plates of food are revealed, you'll want to grab one that he's not thinking of, which is indicated in his thought bubble. Ultimately, it can get pretty tricky, as you can see with some foods looking terribly similar. To my knowledge, there's not much else we can do here, but if we go to the other field trip option, being the farm, we'll see that it's a work in progress. We're in a cornfield, and the only notable thing that's really here is a sign indicating that something new is in the works, signed by Baldi. Breaking out of bounds here, we'll see that, unsurprisingly, there isn't a lot going on out here with this cornfield. No Baldis, no Zardis, no ghosts of past baseball players, just good old corn. I'm curious what will end up here when the game receives an update. Going back to the camping map is more interesting though. Exploring with the camera, we'll see that there is in fact a shop setup right outside the camping map. This was confusing at first, seeing as I hadn't tried out hide-and-seek mode at this point. So eventually what I realized is that the player can access the campsite while playing through hide-and-seek levels. It's during the second level of hide-and-seek that the player will want to find the key to this type of door, where a bus pass is located inside. Recovering this bus pass and completing the level, we'll want to get to the shop area, where we'll then see Baldi's ready to go camping, as he stands by the bus in the little outside area. This explains why we're able to see the shop area right outside the campsite, even if we just pick the minigame from the start menu. In hide and seek, you can get here through progression. It's only when we get the bus pass and go camping where we can actually win prizes from the minigames. If you remember, there was a camping field trip demo that was released back in 2018, which helped promote the game's Kickstarter in its early days. Revisiting it shows that there are some similarities with Baldi's Plus Field Trip. Obviously, the camp setting. However, the woods in the demo appear to be much bigger, and the minigame within isn't quite the same, as we need to collect wood in the forest along with dodging bear traps. If we look closely in the demo, we can see it's a Baldi hiding behind a tree that's close to the fire. I point this out because if we come back to the Baldi's Basics Plus campsite, we can in fact find it's a bully doing the same exact thing. Breaking through the invisible barrier for a closer look, I found that the bully is attached to the tree, being called Pine Tree Bully in the game files. Kind of a fun relic of the past to find 7 years later. So switching gears, there are 3 challenges in the game, which include Speedy, Stealthy, and Grapple. Going into Grapple first, we'll get to try out a new item, as our character's legs are apparently broken, hence the grappling hook being our only means of movement. Overall, with well-placed shots and constantly being on the move, the grappling hook gives the player an edge if you were to ask me. Once completing it, we get a big old creepy thumbs up from Baldi. There's not really much occurring out of bounds during this particular mode, however, I did notice something when a leak began. The school will fill with water temporarily while playing, making the school that much harder to traverse through. We can see that the water will fill the entirety of the map though, including the out-of-bounds portion that we normally cannot access. Because of this, we're able to see the blacked out areas of the player's UI map with our camera. Nonetheless, it's interesting to see, and also visible on the edges of the level right here. This followed with me trying to mess with one of the new characters, Miss Pomp. She'll hop around in her high-heeled shoe inviting students to her class. We'll want to make sure we get to her class in time, as we'll be awarded YTPs. Not to mention, she will not be pleased with us if we decide to be a no-show for her class. Take a listen. So after seeing this demonic behavior, I tried making multiples of her, but wasn't having any luck with making them functional. As you can see, they just kind of sit there. This did, however, result with the map showing that she's apparently in all the classrooms she can access, waiting for us. So we'll go ahead and mark that one as F in the chat. Moving on to the next challenge, I tried out Stealthy. This mode is challenging in its own way, as we have to be fairly sneaky while collecting the notebooks. The map comes in handy, as we're not only able to see ourselves, but the other characters within the school too. We have an inventory filled with chalk erasers that are quite dirty, as they do come in handy, allowing us to hide within the chalk clouds they create, preventing us from being seen. Once again though, it's pretty quiet in regards to the out-of-bounds area. This entire level is just a bunch of principals gliding about, making for a silly sight. Baldi sits in the principal's office, waiting for the player to be taken in by a principal. Becoming impervious, I made it so that the principals couldn't capture me, but they certainly tried their hardest. This is when I realized what occurs out of bounds when we use our map though. Holding tab allows us to see a transparent map we can use as we traverse. However, pressing M will open up a more visible map through the You Can Think pad, overall making navigation through these levels a tad easier. Using the You Can Think pad map, you'll see how it generates outside the map as this giant black canvas. Going in closer, we'll see the map itself, which in turn is the map we're normally looking at on the pad in game. It's pretty trippy to view, given the user interface isn't meant to be seen like this. When putting it away, we'll see that it's semi-active still, with various markings and icons being left over, along with the arrows that represent the location of the principals. So the last level within challenges is Speedy. We're not going to spend too much time with this challenge, as it's fairly self-explanatory with its given name. Not to mention the challenges we just went through have been in prior versions of the game over the past few years. Baldi is so fast in this though. It's incredibly impressive to know that there are players out here that have completed this challenge. As you can see, I was struggling after only collecting 5 notebooks. Unglorious. Baldi clearly isn't joking around in this mode. If we manage to beat this challenge, it will give us a big thumbs up once again. Thanks, Baldi. However, it's to my understanding that when the player returns to the main menu, based on the level they were exiting from, we're able to see a map of where we were just playing. After repeatedly quitting out of various game modes, we'll see that these little title screen maps, as we'll call them, don't always refresh after each play session, but instead, just draw the new map over top the old one. Or at least, that's what looks like is happening here, along with some condensing. Another notable occurrence that takes place during the main menu is something that only takes place on a certain month and day. along with a particular file name we need to make. Granted, this only seems to work on version 0.7, but to my knowledge, if we name our file 99 and then just set the main menu, well, this happens.
99 seconds. 99 seconds.
You have to wait for a significant amount of time before it occurs. From what I gather, not only do we need to use the file name 99, but it also apparently has to be the 9th day of the 9th month in 2024 for this to occur. We then wait for 99 seconds. Eventually the screen will go black as we get a series of cryptic messages, with the entirety of this secret getting dark and creepy fairly quick. I definitely recommend checking it out in full, but I digress. Let's check out the last mode in the game. It's at this time that I dove into the hide and seek mode, as we check out the final and remaining mode we've yet to play. There are multiple difficulties for hide and seek, with normal, arcade, strict, and explorer. Picking one of the following basically dictates how many power tubes a player will have throughout the session, with strict being the hardest difficulty setting. Starting on the first floor of 5, we only have to collect 4 notebooks, as it's not terribly hard. Where did the principal just go though? He just came in here, didn't he? The horror has already begun. Anyway, once completing the first floor, we'll get a results screen, which ultimately gives us a grade. This follows with having the option to make a pit stop at the store section that we had covered earlier. Taking a peek out of bounds here, we'll see that this place is the only thing in existence while being here, as we float within the giant light blue skybox. Floor 2 is more or less like playing the traditional mode though, as we need to get 7 notebooks. Remember, this is where we can get that bus pass that we talked about earlier. Moving on to floor 3, you'll see that it's eerily similar to the previous, but we need to collect more notebooks this time around. It's when we get to floor 4 though that you'll notice things are beginning to escalate. Popping out of bounds here, we'll see there's some type of gas leak within a portion of the level, along with the skybox changing, as it's no longer that blue sky image. It's actually the east-west, north-south ceiling and floor box that we're encased in now, which, if you recall, is what we normally see when going off camera in the main menu. This level is also unique in itself, as the layout is fairly different, along with the vents being in play now. We can once again see how the ventilation shaft will generate when in use though. In regards to collecting notebooks, we'll see that some areas are not powered up on this floor, leaving the player unable to use the math machine. This makes it so we have to seek out switches which will power up particular math machines we'll need. Amongst the power problem, I also met a new character at this point, Dr. Reflex. A cheap doctor who employs a unique reflex testing method to diagnose students. Once stopping us, as long as we select the correct sign he eventually displays, he'll leave us alone. Otherwise, he's coming for us and will literally smash the player down in size, which will hinder the player from being able to interact with particular things such as grabbing notebooks. You'll also notice that we get to see what I believe is the student we're playing as while being in the smush state by the doctor, which I found interesting. Speaking of students, there's other ones we can interact with now who seem to be looking for particular items, as they display this in a thought bubble. So keep your eye out, because giving them said items will reward you with YTPs, as they jump with joy and freeze in the air, disappearing shortly after. Managing to survive and reach floor 5 will place us in the final floor. It is very challenging, as it has everything the rest of the floors have, along with teleporting machines to make it that much more intense. Being out of bounds here will show that the skybox has once again changed, as it is now a black canvas with white squares, pretty much resembling outer space. However, I believe the most unique aspect of this floor is this area. Gaining entry to this area will cause the player to start spinning around the center of the room, as we gravitate towards the center, where we can see the outer space skybox. Getting sucked in makes it appear as if we're in space, which doesn't last long, as we'll eventually and randomly teleport back into the map. Watching this occur off camera, we'll see that our surroundings don't change much while the game decides where to teleport us. Sadly, there isn't really much else occurring out of bounds, or at least nothing we haven't already seen in this video. Although, I have to say, with the totality of all these obstacles and challenges within this one floor, I can only imagine how frustrating it would be to successfully navigate and complete this final floor. There's an off chance with having random seed on that you can get this level as well. It is just as difficult, but as conveyor belts we must navigate instead. Checking this level out off camera shows that we're back in that skybox from before, but what's more notable is the rafters above. They reach far out and well beyond the level itself. However, if the player beats a floor 5 level, we'll end up in a classroom with Baldi and some balloons, as he does a happy dance and sings about our victory. As you can see, this room is all that exists anymore, but over time something does happen. Slowing it down, we'll see Baldi starts glitching in front of us as he says, well, I'm not sure. Maybe someone in the comments could clarify. It's at this point though that a brief screen will appear with text indicating that baldiending.exe has encountered an error. There's more to read, but we'll see a version of Baldi in the background, and you'll realize this is the same shot of this Baldi, often referred to as Bad Sum, that also appeared during the 9-9 Easter egg portion, which I found to be pretty interesting. Completing the game at this point, I went ahead and installed this cool level editor for the game. I wanted to, well, mess around. I was displeased that my earlier efforts broke the duplicates of our friends from before, so with the editor, I made my own little test level to see how it all reacts, etc. It took some getting used to, but I was able to catch on fairly quickly, as I added a bunch of beans, missed pomps, and even Dr. Reflexes. As you can see, it gets pretty wild, especially when we're late for all the missed pomps. We can see tons of their timers go by the screen, as we're officially late for their classes. Hope they're not too upset. Let's find out. Terrifying! I had all the doctors and beans locked in other rooms to temporarily preserve my sanity, but as you can see, they are ready to throw down. Releasing them is exactly what you think. Chaos. The doctors are smashing everyone, and it's hard to focus. Take a listen. I genuinely enjoy this editor, so you can find a link to it in the description. But with that, we've concluded our out-of-bounds journey in Baldi's Basics Plus. I hope you enjoyed this alternative playthrough of the game, and I'll see you in the next video real soon. Cheers!